Diane Simmons spent 8 full seasons sitting next to Tom Tucker reading the news, and almost nobody watching knew she was a killer. Then Family Guy handed her a feature-length murder mystery, let her take out 5 people in one night, and ended the episode with a sniper bullet in her back and a cliff under her feet. She never came back, and she is only the beginning. Family Guy has a reputation as the show where nobody ever pays for anything, the show where Peter shoots whoever he wants, Lois lies about whoever she wants, and the reset button hits every Sunday night at 8. That reputation is lazy, and across 25 seasons, the writers have been quietly proving it wrong. 10 characters on this show have earned their endings in ways that stuck, and tonight we're going through every single one of them. Welcome to Red Umbrella. Let us begin. Diane Simmons, the co-anchor who became a serial killer. For 8 full seasons, Diane Simmons was background furniture. She sat next to Tom Tucker at the Channel 5 news desk, read the headlines, traded small talk, and faded back into the wallpaper of Quahog the second the scene cut. If you sat someone down and asked them to name 10 Family Guy characters off the top of their head, Diane probably wouldn't crack the list. She was there, she was steady, she was the calm blonde woman in the red jacket who said good evening and handed things over to Ollie Williams for the weather. That was the entire job, which is exactly why what the show did to her in 2010 worked so well. The show took the most overlooked character on its roster, gave her a feature-length murder mystery all to herself, and revealed that the quiet woman next to Tom Tucker had been sitting on enough rage to kill 5 people in a single night. Then, the show shot her off a cliff and left her there. She never came back. The show told Seth MacFarlane fans directly on Twitter that she was gone for good, and more than 15 years later, that promise has held. The episode is called And Then There Were Fewer, Season 9, Episode 1. It aired in September 2010, and it was the first episode of Family Guy to air in widescreen and high definition, which tells you the show knew this one was a big deal before a single person pressed play. The setup borrows from an Agatha Christie novel and an old Clue movie. Almost the entire town gets invited to a fancy dinner at a remote mansion. The host turns out to be James Woods, playing a wild, evil version of himself. He tells the guests he wants to make amends for the terrible things he has done to all of them. A storm knocks out the bridge. A gun rigged to a chair goes off and kills a woman named Stephanie by accident. James Woods gets stabbed in the back during a blackout. Muriel Goldman is stabbed next. Derek Wilcox gets his skull caved in with a Golden Globe Award. Priscilla has her throat slit. The body count keeps climbing, and every guest in the mansion becomes a suspect. The reveal is that the quiet news co-anchor did all of it. Diane walks Lois out to the edge of a tall cliff at the end of the episode. She is calm when she explains why. Her life had unraveled in a way nobody had been paying attention to. She had secretly been dating James Woods, and he had dumped her. Tom Tucker had arranged for the network to replace her as co-anchor with a younger woman because she had turned 40. In one swing of bad luck, the job she had quietly held for nearly a decade and the secret romance she had been leaning on were both yanked out from under her. So she planned a dinner party. She paid the intern Priscilla to seduce James Woods and turn him into a born-again Christian so he would invite everyone to his mansion. She rigged the chair. She waited for the power to go out. She did it all to kill James and frame Tom for it and take down the 2 men who had thrown her away. Stephanie, the accidental victim in the chair, was not part of the plan. Diane meant for James to sit there. James moved at the last second. Stephanie sat in his place to test him, and the gun went off into her head instead. That unplanned death forced Diane to keep killing. Every new guest who got too close to figuring it out had to be silenced. Muriel caught her planting the murder weapon in Tom Tucker's bag. Priscilla knew too much. Derek was just in the wrong hallway with the wrong cell phone signal. Each body was a cover-up for the body before it. The whole thing snowballed from a single miss. Lois is the only one who puts it together. She pieces it together from a small slip. Diane casually mentions details about her upcoming solo news debut that she could not possibly know about yet, since the news of her promotion was days away from being public. Lois catches it. Diane sees that Lois caught it. So Diane walks Lois out to the cliffs with a gun and prepares to take the last witness off the board. And then a bullet hits Diane in the back from a second-story window of the mansion, and she falls off the cliff into the ocean. The shooter is Stewie, perched in an upstairs window with a sniper rifle and a silencer, watching the whole thing through a scope. He saved Lois, but not for the reason Lois thinks. The line the show gives him is that nobody gets to kill Lois but him. He is protecting his own future kill. It is dark in a way that the show does not usually let itself be, and the fact that nobody on screen ever finds out Stewie did it makes it darker. But the part worth sitting with is Diane herself, because this is the clearest purest and cleanest earning of karma the show has ever produced, and almost nobody talks about it in those terms. Think about what she actually did. She murdered Stephanie, a woman she had never met, by accident. She murdered James Woods, her ex, on purpose. She murdered Muriel, a sweet older woman whose worst crime was being nosy, because Muriel spotted her hiding evidence. She murdered Priscilla, the intern she had paid to help her, the moment Priscilla became a threat. She murdered Derek, a man whose only role in the whole story was being the husband of Brian's ex-girlfriend, because he got close to a working phone. And she was one breath away from murdering Lois in cold blood, just to finish covering her tracks. 5 people dead, a 6th lined up in her sights, all because a man dumped her and a boss replaced her. The show does not flinch from any of it. There is no last-minute joke where Diane reveals she was kidding. There is no cutaway that undercuts the weight of what she did. The writers let her be a real killer, and then they let her fall, and then they let her stay fallen. Her gravestone is shown in a later episode. The year of her death is printed on it, 1970 to 2010. She is the first main-tier recurring character the show ever permanently took off the board and left permanent. Everything about the choice signals that the show is serious, and the reason it lands as karma rather than as shock value is the shape of what she chose. Diane did not get a raw deal from the universe. She got a rough turn from 2 men she trusted, which is something thousands of people go through every day without murdering 5 strangers at a dinner party. The show draws a very clear line between being wronged and becoming a monster. Getting dumped is not a license. Getting replaced at work is not a license. The moment Diane decided to convert her pain into a body count, she stopped being someone who had been treated badly and became someone who was doing something worse than anything that had been done to her. The sniper bullet is the universe closing that ledger. There is also something worth noticing about the way Stewie delivers the killing shot. The show could have had Lois wrestle the gun away. The show could have had Joe burst through the door in the nick of time. The show could have had Peter trip into the scene and accidentally save his wife. Any of those versions would have let the character die, but kept the ending light. Instead, the show picks the coldest option on the menu. A little boy with a sniper rifle, 2 floors up, takes the shot with 0 hesitation and 0 emotion. The whole thing has the weight of an execution. That tonal choice is what makes the death feel like a judgment rather than a joke. Stewie is not the moral universe of the show. He is a baby with a scope. But in that single scene, the show uses him like a verdict. The writers later confirm something small that matters a lot to the karma of the whole situation. James Woods, who Diane killed first, ended up getting brought back to life. The show explained in a later episode that paramedics rushed him to a secret laboratory for celebrities and revived him, because he was a celebrity and the world was not done with him yet. So James Woods, the man whose dumping started Diane's spiral, got a second chance at being alive. Diane did not. She stayed in the ocean. The difference says everything. The man she killed for revenge got to keep existing. She did not. Her entire plan failed not just in the moment, but across time. The person she was trying to punish got off easy. She paid the full price. The role Diane plays in the larger show is also worth holding up to the light. For 8 seasons, she had been a quiet presence. She showed up whenever the plot needed a news report to explain something. She read the words in front of her. Tom Tucker made jokes at her expense, and she mostly smiled through it on camera. The tension between those two was always there if you were looking for it. The show had given hints that her first husband had died by suicide, that her life outside the news desk was fragile, that Tom was increasingly making her the butt of his on-air humor. Little breadcrumbs scattered across years of episodes, and the feature-length mystery picked up those breadcrumbs and made them the motive. What that means, if you pull back and look at it, is that Diane's villain turn was not a random plot swing. The show had been quietly seeding her unhappiness for a long time. When she finally snapped, she did not come out of nowhere. She came out of 8 years of being overlooked, talked over, and pushed down the ladder of her own workplace, in front of a whole town watching. The karma works in 2 directions. Diane earned her death by choosing to solve her problem with 5 murders, and the men who treated her like she was replaceable also took a hit. James Woods spent weeks thinking he was going to die. Tom Tucker spent the whole episode being accused of being a killer, and the cozy little news desk Diane used to sit at was permanently changed. A new co-anchor named Joyce Kinney replaced her in the next season, and Tom had to live with the fact that his coldness helps create the person who tried to frame him for murder. The other detail worth saying plainly is that the show took this episode seriously as a craft piece. It was nominated at the Emmys for music composition. The writers built a real mystery with real clues. The director shot it like a movie, not like a sitcom. The guest cast included Patrick Stewart Stewart, Drew Barrymore, and Ashley Tisdale. For 1 hour of television, Family Guy stopped being Family Guy and became a locked-room murder mystery with actual stakes and an actual ending. That choice, to treat Diane's story as something that deserved real craft, is part of why her death feels earned rather than thrown away. The show put its chips on the table for her. It built a real story around her, and then it let her fall and kept her down. When people argue that Family Guy is a show where nobody ever really pays for anything, Diane Simmons is the first piece of evidence you hand them. The show took a background character, gave her a full episode of her own, let her be as evil as the show has ever let anyone be, and then closed the book on her forever. She killed 5 people. She fell off a cliff. She never came back. A sniper bullet from an upstairs window ended a woman who thought she had gotten away with it. The camera held on her empty spot on the cliff edge for a second longer than it needed to, and then it moved on, and the show moved on, and she was gone. Her being gone is the point. The show spent a decade building a person who could snap, and then it let her snap, and then it refused to pretend it had never happened. In a show famous for resetting everything back to zero by the end of the half hour, that refusal is what turns an ending into a verdict. The woman at the news desk got what she deserved, and the show had the discipline to leave her there. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But if Diane represents the show punishing someone who chose to become a monster, the next character on this list represents something different and maybe even more interesting. A creature the show built as a joke, kept alive as a running gag for a quarter of a century, and then let one of its own family members end for good in the most graphic possible way on a Sunday night in 2025. Section 2. Ernie the Giant Chicken. 25 Years of Violence. Ended by Meg. An expired coupon was handed over in the year 2000. That is where the whole thing started. Season 2, an episode called Da Boom, a flashback scene, a parking lot, and a giant yellow chicken in a bow tie walking up to Peter Griffin and offering him a little piece of paper. Peter took it, tried to use it, found out it had expired, and turned around and punched the chicken in the face. The chicken punched back. They broke through walls. They smashed through stores. They ended up on top of a building, fell off. Peter landed on the chicken, walked away thinking he had killed him, and the chicken opened one eye in the last frame of the fight. The joke was set. A giant, man-sized chicken named Ernie and a fat dad in a white shirt were going to spend the rest of the show beating each other half to death over something neither of them could quite remember, and neither of them would ever actually win. For 25 years, that was one of the most reliable jokes in the entire Family Guy playbook. You could almost set a watch to it. Every few seasons, the chicken would appear out of nowhere, Peter would see him, they would lock eyes, and the rest of the half hour would break into this absurd, sprawling, endless fistfight. They fought through train stations. They fought on cruise ships. They fought in airports, where an airplane propeller chopped the chicken up and he still survived. They fought down in sewers, where a crocodile tried to eat them, and they beat the crocodile to death with its own tail, and then kept fighting. They fought on a Ferris wheel. They fought through Japan, where scientific experiments turned Ernie into a full-size Godzilla, and Peter into some kind of super-powered warrior, and the two of them crashed back to Earth and kept going. Every single time, Peter would seem to win. Every single time, the chicken would open one eye after Peter walked away. Every single time, you knew he was coming back. The fights are part of the reason the show survived its own cancellation. Fox canceled Family Guy in 2002 because of low ratings, and it took a cult following passed around through pirated clips on early file sharing sites to bring it back 3 years later. A lot of the clips that were getting passed around were the chicken fights. They were visual. They were insane. They did not need any context. You did not have to have watched a single full episode to watch Peter and a chicken destroy an entire downtown block over nothing, and you would still laugh. The giant chicken fights were viral before the word viral was being used that way. They helped keep the show alive during the years when it wasn't even airing, so by the time the show reached season 23 in 2025, Ernie was not just a recurring joke. He was one of the oldest continuous jokes in the show's history. He had a wife named Nicole. He had a teenage son named Nugget. He had appeared in video games. He had been planned as the final boss of a theoretical Family Guy movie. The producers themselves had admitted in behind-the-scenes commentaries that they had planned to kill him off at least twice before, and had always walked it back because the character was too valuable and because they were holding him for that movie. Which is what makes what happened on season 23, episode 5, an episode called The Chicken or the Meg, which aired in early 2025, so surprising and so satisfying at the same time. The show killed him, for real. Head off the body running around like a chicken with its head head cut off. Because that is the joke. Because of course it is the joke. And the person who did it was not Peter. It was Meg. The plot of the episode is a wild one, but it is easy to follow. Meg goes on a reality dating show and ends up connecting with a teenage boy named Nugget, who turns out to be the teenage son of Ernie the giant chicken. This should be a disaster for 100 reasons, but it is not. Meg genuinely likes Nugget, and she starts spending time with his family. Nicole welcomes her. Ernie, surprisingly, welcomes her too. Meg suddenly finds herself fitting in better with this family of giant chickens than she ever has with her own. The joke of the episode is that Meg is closer to being part of the chicken family than she is to being part of the Griffin family, and the show, for once, is not wrong about that. Things go sideways when Ernie realizes who Meg's father is. Ernie, whose whole life has been shaped by his ongoing war with Peter, cannot handle the idea that his son is dating Peter's daughter, so he gives Meg an ultimatum: cut ties with Peter or stop dating Nugget. Pick one. That is the moment the episode turns, and that is the moment Meg sees Ernie clearly for the first time, because what Ernie just did to her is exactly what Peter would do. The controlling demand, the either or, the refusal to let her have a life that isn't about him. Meg walks into Ernie's house thinking maybe she has finally found a family that is not going to treat her this way. And instead, she finds out that the giant chicken who has been beating up her father for 25 years is, under the feathers, basically a copy of her father. Same anger, same selfishness, same inability to let her be her own person. What happens next is the most graphic ending any recurring Family Guy character has ever gotten. Meg and Ernie are about to fight. Ernie says he cannot hit a girl, which is the one scrap of pride he still has left. Meg does not extend him the same mercy. The next shot is Meg walking out of the house, holding Ernie's head by the top. Behind her, the headless body of the giant chicken is running in circles around the lawn, literally doing the cartoon joke of a chicken with its head cut off. And this time, for the first time in 25 years of Ernie seeming to die and then opening one eye in the last frame, the camera does not go back to the body. There is no last second twitch. There is no flicker of an eyelid. He is dead. He stays dead. Months later, one of the show's top producers, a man named Alex Sulkin, went on the record with an entertainment website and confirmed that Ernie was not coming back. His exact point was that the character had gone the way of all flesh, which is a polite way of saying the chicken is in the ground. The reason he gave was practical and a little sad. The production team had spent a quarter of a century trying to top the last chicken fight with an even bigger chicken fight, and they had run out of places to go. The Japan fight had already turned Ernie into Godzilla. The crossover with The Simpsons had already turned the chicken fight into a full-on war between two animated shows. There was nothing left to escalate. The character had done every fight there was to do. Better to end him cleanly than to drag him through a worse version of himself for another decade. What makes this count as Ernie getting what he deserved, and not just a cold business decision, is the shape of how the show chose to let him go. Think about the kind of death the show could have given him. They could have had him get hit by a bus mid-punch. They could have had him fall into industrial machinery during a brewery fight. They could have given him a quiet death in a hospital bed from old age. They could have blown him up in a spaceship, or drowned him at sea, or run him through a propeller one final, definitive time. Any of those endings would have gotten him off the board. None of them would have meant anything. Instead, the show picked an ending that directly answered the entire question of who this character actually was. Ernie started the feud with Peter over an expired coupon. That is an almost comically small grievance. He spent the next 25 years destroying parts of Quahog, killing bystanders, wrecking his own life, and teaching his son to hate a family he did not really have a reason to hate. He built a marriage and a household around a grudge so small it could fit on a piece of paper, and he passed it on to Nugget without even thinking about it, because passing grudges down was the only kind of parenting he knew. When Meg showed up, Ernie had exactly one chance to break that pattern, a chance to let his son be happy, a chance to say, alright, this girl is not her father, and if my boy likes her, that is enough. He did not take it. He forced the same ultimatum on Nugget that Peter would have forced on Meg. He chose the grudge over the child, and the person who paid the price for that choice, the person who finally ended him, was the child his enemy had failed to protect for her entire life. Meg, the most neglected member of the Griffin family, killed the giant chicken because the giant chicken turned out to be just another version of the father who had neglected her. That is not just a death, that is a theme. There is something else worth noticing about the ending, which is that the show finally closed the door on the idea that Peter would ever be the one to do it. For 25 years, the deal was that these two men were locked together. Peter needed Ernie, and Ernie needed Peter. There is even a whole episode called Fecal Matters, where Ernie is dying of bird flu, and Peter has the chance to let him die, and the rest of the family convinces forces Peter to save his life, because without the chicken to fight, a part of Peter would die too. They were tied together. They defined each other. The only satisfying ending for either of them should have been the two of them going out together, exhausted, in one last city-leveling punch-up. The show refused to give them that ending. Peter did not kill Ernie. Ernie did not kill Peter. Meg killed Ernie, and she did it off screen, and Peter was not even there. That is the cut that makes it karmic instead of just dramatic. Ernie did not get the glorious death against his oldest rival that he had been set up for across 25 years. He got a smaller, uglier death at the hands of a teenage girl in a reality TV dating episode. Because in the end, the show decided he did not deserve the big one. He had spent a quarter century telling himself he was a warrior, locked in an epic war, and he went out because he was a bad dad who could not let his son be happy. The story he was telling about himself turned out to be wrong, and the ending matched the real story, not the one he thought he was living. The graphic nature of the death matters too. The show could have cut away. The show could have shown the aftermath and let it be a shrug. Instead, the last image the show gives the audience is the headless body running in circles on the lawn. The literal visual of the cartoon phrase, done completely straight. That image sits somewhere between funny and genuinely unsettling, and the discomfort is the point. A character who had, for 25 years, been the living embodiment of a joke got ended with a final, unavoidable version of that same joke. The chicken finally ran around like a chicken with its head cut off. There was no more joke after that. He was just gone. There is one more detail that sharpens the whole thing, which is that Meg herself did not seem bothered by what she had done. She walked out of the house carrying the head. That was the shot. No apology, no regret, no fourth wall line about how she hoped nobody minded. She killed the giant chicken and left with a souvenir, because after a lifetime of being ignored by the people around her, she had finally realized that asking permission did not get her anywhere, and that the only person who was going to pull her out of a bad situation was going to be herself. The death of Ernie the giant chicken is, in its own strange way, a coming-of-age moment for Meg Griffin, disguised as the ending of a completely different character's story. In Quahog, that is as close to closure as anyone ever gets. The oldest running joke in the show finally stopped running because the person the joke was hurting the most finally stood up and ended it. Ernie got what he deserved for a fight he should have let go of long before it reached his kitchen. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But Ernie, for all his violence, was at least a grown man picking a fight with another grown man. The next character on this list went a step further, and a generation backward, and tried to erase his own brother from the history of the universe. Section 3. Bertram, the half-brother who tried to erase Stewie from the universe. Most rivalries in Family Guy start over something stupid. A coupon, a parking space, a chicken someone didn't want to share. The rivalry between Stewie Griffin and a baby named Bertram started over a jar in a fertility clinic, and it ended with one of them dead in Venice, Italy, in the year 1500 and something, with a crossbow bolt in his chest and another one in his head. That is a real sentence about a cartoon, and somehow it is also one of the most satisfying deaths the show has ever put on screen. To understand why, you have to back up and understand who Bertram is, because he is not a villain the show pulled out of a hat. The show planted him years before it killed him off. In a season 4 episode called Sibling Rivalry, Lois decides she wants another baby, and Peter panics and goes to get a vasectomy. A little accident happens at the clinic involving a cup, a mix-up, and a sample that does not get thrown away like it was supposed to. Peter's genetic material ends up in a vial that ends up being used to get another woman pregnant. That woman gives birth to a baby boy. The baby boy is named Bertram. Bertram, like Stewie, is a genius. Bertram, like Stewie, talks in full sentences and plots and schemes with the vocabulary of a grown man. Bertram, like Stewie, has a goal of world domination and the intelligence to chase it. The only real difference is that Stewie was raised in the Griffin house and Bertram was not. The two of them meet on a playground. They fight over who gets to be king of the playground. Stewie wins that first fight, but he does not kill Bertram. The show makes it look like he did, but actually he just planted a tree over where he buried him, and Bertram climbs out of the ground at the end of the episode and admits he ran away. That moment, that single buried tree, is the show planting a seed it will not pay off for 7 more years. Bertram shows up here and there across the seasons. He is there in Stewie Kills Lois, voicing his opinion from a television screen. He is there in background shots. He is there as a threat that has never really gone away. And then, in 2011, in a a Season 9 episode called The Big Bang Theory, the show finally lets him swing for real. The episode is about a lot of things. It is about Stewie trying to use his time machine to come up with a better comeback to an insult Brian threw at him at the dinner table. It is about Stewie and Brian getting bounced out of the space-time continuum, which is a fancy way of saying they get thrown into a place where time and space no longer work. It is about Stewie figuring out, in one of the most ridiculous and oddly clever jokes the show has ever done, that the explosion he used to get himself and Brian back into regular time was actually the Big Bang, the original event that created the universe. In this episode's version of things, Stewie created the universe. He is, quite literally, the reason everything exists, which is exactly why Bertram picks this moment to strike. He sneaks into the Griffin house, distracts Stewie with a toy lawnmower, steals the time machine's return pad, and disappears into the past. And as soon as he disappears, reality starts to unravel. Ripples begin to tear through the world like tears in a piece of paper. Stewie and Brian run for cover inside the time machine, and Stewie figures out what is happening. Bertram has gone back in time to kill one of Stewie's ancestors. If Stewie was never born, Stewie never creates the universe with that explosion. And if the universe was never created, nothing and nobody has ever existed, and all of reality wipes itself out from one end of time to the other. That is a staggering threat. Most Family Guy villains want to kill someone or take over a company or humiliate a rival. Bertram wants to erase the universe. The sheer scale of what he is willing to do is the reason his death, when it comes, feels like a real ending instead of a throwaway gag. Stewie and Brian chase him into the past. They land in Venice, Italy, around the year 1500, somewhere in the early days of the Italian Renaissance. The show is not wasting time here. Bertram has gone far, far back, hundreds of years, to hit Stewie at the root of his family tree. And the ancestor Bertram is hunting turns out to be one of the most famous people who has ever lived, Leonardo da Vinci. That is the reveal. Stewie is descended from Leonardo da Vinci. The show uses this for a quick joke. Stewie realizes he must be Italian and makes a couple of small comments about suddenly understanding his own love of certain foods. But the plot point underneath the joke is doing real work. It tells you how serious Bertram is. He did not go back a generation or two to pick off a great-grandparent. He went back 500 years, all the way to the Renaissance, to snip the whole family line off at the bud. He worked out that Leonardo was on Lois's side of the family, which meant killing him would not also erase Bertram himself, since Bertram and Stewie share Peter as a father, but have different mothers. Every piece of his plan has been thought through. This is not a hothead lashing out. This is a cold, careful plan to erase a sibling from existence and take an entire universe with him in the process. The battle itself is one of the biggest action scenes Family Guy has ever done. Bertram arrives in Venice and throws a knife at Leonardo. Stewie dives in front of it with a wooden paint palette and blocks the blow. Bertram grabs one of Leonardo's early flying inventions, a wooden glider with canvas wings, and takes off into the sky. Stewie grabs another of Leonardo's flying machines and chases him. The two babies fight in the air over Venice, throwing punches and firing weapons at each other from Renaissance-era contraptions held together with rope and wood. Stewie launches a magnetic missile at Bertram. Bertram jumps out of his glider and parachutes safely to the ground. Stewie blows up the glider in mid-air anyway, just to close off the escape route. They both crash back down to Earth. That is when Bertram does something that makes the story land. He grabs a crossbow. He points it at Stewie, at Brian, and at Leonardo da Vinci. Stewie, gasping, tries to reason with him. He tells Bertram that he created the universe. He tells Bertram that if Leonardo dies, Stewie is never born. And if Stewie is never born, the Big Bang never happens. And if the Big Bang never happens, everything that has ever existed is wiped out. Not just the two of them. Not just the Griffin family. Every star, every planet, every person, every blade of grass that has ever lived. All of it gone forever because of this one decision. Bertram does not care. The show makes him stare Stewie in the eyes and make the choice out loud. To him, erasing Stewie is worth destroying the universe. He would rather have nothing exist than have Stewie exist. And then he fires the crossbow into Leonardo da Vinci's chest and kills him. This is the line Bertram should not have crossed. And this is the line the show uses to earn what comes next. Stewie, in a rage, tackles Bertram. The fight on the ground is fast and ugly. Bertram gets the upper hand. He knocks Stewie down. He gets ready to finish it. And then Stewie grabs the crossbow, the same one Bertram just used on Leonardo, and puts a bolt through Bertram's chest. Then, to make absolutely certain, he puts a second bolt through Bertram's head. Bertram, for the first time in the whole show, does not talk after being hurt. He does not make a last last quip. He does not announce a clever plan. He is just dead, on the ground, in Renaissance Italy, killed with the exact weapon he had just used to try to unmake everything. The show stays still for a second, and then the joke of it kicks in. Brian looks at the fact that the universe has not ended, despite Leonardo being dead. Stewie realizes that there must still be a way for his family line to continue. He figures out that he will have to become his own ancestor. He takes a small bit of his own genetic material, injects it into Leonardo's girlfriend, and then has himself cryogenically frozen, which is a fancy way of saying he freezes himself in ice, under the Griffin house to wait out the 500 years until the main timeline picks back up. Brian goes home in the time machine, gets a letter from the Vatican telling him where to dig, and thaws Stewie out. It is a ridiculous ending, and the show makes it ridiculous on purpose, but underneath the absurd comedy is a completely serious piece of storytelling. Bertram tried to destroy the universe. Bertram killed a genius who had not done anything to anybody, and Bertram died by the exact weapon he had picked up to do the killing. The show gave him the weapon. The show let him use it, and the show then made that same weapon the thing that ended him. There is nothing more classical than that. It is the kind of ending that goes back to the oldest stories people ever told. The idea that the tool a villain chooses to hurt someone with is going to be the tool that kills him in the end. What makes it land as karma instead of just payback is the fact that Bertram had been given every chance to be something better. He and Stewie share the same genius-level mind. They share a father. They share most of the qualities that could have, under different circumstances, made them best friends or partners instead of rivals. In their first meeting on the playground, Stewie actually spared him. He planted that tree over a grave that was not really a grave, and he let Bertram walk away. Bertram had a full life between that episode and The Big Bang Theory. He had time to choose something other than revenge. He did not. He came back, years later, with a plan that would have erased not just Stewie, but every person who had ever been born. All to settle a playground score. The size of the response gives you the shape of the person. A man willing to unmake the universe over a grudge is a man who has no brakes at all. And a man with no brakes should not be surprised when his own weapon swings back around and hits him. Bertram's death is also unusual in the landscape of Family Guy because it has stayed permanent. Most characters in the show die and come back. Stewie has died many times and always shows back up. Peter has died and come back. Brian famously died in season 12 and was back 2 episodes later. Bertram has never come back. The show gave him a couple of short appearances in other time travel episodes where he is technically still alive in the past, but the Bertram of the main timeline, the one who tried to end the universe, is gone for good. Like Diane Simmons, he joined the small club of recurring villains the show decided to end permanently. And like Diane, the show made sure his ending was not a joke, but a real, weighted moment of story. There is one final detail that sharpens the whole thing. The universe did not end when Leonardo da Vinci died. The universe ended up being fine because Stewie found a way to stand in for his own ancestor and keep the timeline going. Which means, in the final math of the episode, Bertram did not even accomplish his goal. He killed a legend. He traveled hundreds of years through time to do it. He lost his own life for it. And in the end, the thing he was trying to undo did not undo. The universe carried on. Stewie carried on. Bertram's entire plan turned out to be pointless, and the only thing he actually managed to permanently remove from history was himself. That is a special kind of failure. That is the kind of failure that can only happen to a person who wanted too much and thought too small at the same time. Bertram wanted to delete a brother. The universe deleted him instead. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But Bertram, for all his evil, was at least a baby with a plan. He had a goal, even if it was a monstrous one, and he pursued it with intelligence. The next man on this list had no plan at all. Just a grown adult in a wife-beater shirt, a baseball bat, and a woman he had been hitting for longer than anyone should have allowed. Section 4. Jeffrey Fiekelman, the abuser crushed into a tree. Family Guy has a rhythm. When the show introduces a bully or a jerk or a creep, there is usually a joke attached. The music stays light, the lines have punchlines, the violence, even when it gets ugly, moves at the speed of a cartoon and gets reset by the time the next episode starts. You know when you are being asked to laugh because the show tells you. Jeffrey Fiekelman does not get any of that. He shows up in 2 episodes. In the first one, he is in the background. In the second one, he is the main story. And in both, the show makes a very specific choice. It strips out the comedy around him. The cutaways stop. The jokes go away. The music gets heavier. here. When Jeff is on screen, Family Guy stops acting like Family Guy. The normal rules of the show do not apply to him. He is played completely straight, and he is played as a monster. He is the closest thing the show has ever produced to a real-world villain, and the show knows it. And when he finally dies, he does not die funny. He dies crushed into a tree under the front end of Peter Griffin's car, with Quagmire behind the wheel, and years of rage coming out all at once. The first time Jeff appears on the show is in a Season 8 episode called Jerome is the New Black. He is standing outside Quagmire's house, holding a baseball bat, shouting for Quagmire's sister Brenda to come out. The joke the show sets up is that Quagmire is trying to keep Jeff from figuring out that Brenda is hiding inside. Jeff sees through it almost immediately, and what he does in response is not something you are supposed to laugh at. He walks past Quagmire, finds Brenda, and beats her with the bat. The show does not make it cartoonish, it does not rush past it, it lets you sit with the moment long enough to understand what you just watched. Jeff is her boyfriend. He hits her with a baseball bat. That is the introduction. That is all the show needs. You know everything about this man within the first minute of meeting him. He comes back 2 seasons later in a Season 10 episode called Screams of Silence, the story of Brenda Q, which is one of the most argued about episodes in the entire history of the show. A lot of longtime viewers do not like it. Some critics picked it out at the time as one of the worst episodes Family Guy had ever produced. The reason is not that the episode is badly made. The reason is that it is not really a comedy. It tells a serious, grim story about domestic abuse, and it expects the audience to sit through it with almost no jokes to soften the edges. People who tuned in expecting a normal half hour of Peter and the guys got a slow, heavy episode about a man hurting a woman he was supposed to love. That choice, whether you like it or not, is what makes Jeff's death land so hard. The show already broke its own rules to tell the story straight, so when the ending finally comes, it does not feel like a gag. It feels like something that had to happen. Here is what happens across the episode. Quagmire is in the hospital at the start, recovering from what is called an accident. Brenda shows up to visit him, and Jeff is with her. Jeff does not know how to behave in a hospital. He does not know how to behave anywhere. He insults Brenda in front of her brother and the people visiting. He tells her to shut up. He treats her like a piece of furniture. Quagmire, flat on his back, has to listen to it. Once Quagmire is back home, the full picture comes into focus. Jeff has been beating Brenda for a long time. The show does not hide this or hint at it. It shows it. The hits are not softened by music or punchlines. He hits her when she parks in the wrong spot. He hits her when she does not laugh at something he thinks is funny. He hits her when he does not like the joke on the television show they are watching. He hits her because he is used to it and because nothing has ever stopped him. He has not slowed down even after he finds out she is pregnant, which means any blow he lands on her is also landing on a baby that has not been born yet. The show does not let the audience forget that detail. This is the part that separates Jeff from every other Family Guy villain up to this point. Connie D'Amico is cruel, but she is still a teenage girl written for jokes. James Woods is evil, but he is playing a campy version of a real person, and the show never lets you forget it is all a send-up. Even Bertram, who wanted to unmake the universe, was doing it in the context of a time travel episode about a paint palette and a flying machine. Jeff is none of those things. Jeff is a grown man in a stained white undershirt who hits his pregnant girlfriend, and the show refuses to make him anything else. There is no cutaway to soften him. There is no running gag to absorb him. He is just a bad man, drawn flat. Quagmire decides he has to stop it, and the plan he comes up with, together with Peter and Joe, is not a clever cartoon plan. It is a desperate one. They are going to lure Jeff out into the woods, alone, and kill him. The plan is to stage something that will get him out of the house, away from Brenda, into a place where no one will find the body. They do not dress it up as anything else. The three of them know they are planning to kill a man. Quagmire is the one driving it because Quagmire is the only one in the group who has watched this happen to his sister for years and cannot take another night of it. The plan falls apart almost immediately. Jeff is not dumb. He sees what is coming. He has probably thought about the possibility that Brenda's brother might one day come for him. So when he and the three men get out into the woods, he moves first. He swings the butt butt of a shotgun into Peter. He swings it into Joe. He knocks both of them unconscious in a matter of seconds and leaves them on the cold ground to freeze to death. Then he drags Quagmire deeper into the trees because Quagmire is the real threat, and Quagmire is the one he wants to deal with personally. In the woods, Jeff beats him. He beats him the way he has been beating Brenda. He does it calmly because he has done this 100 times before. And then he puts his hands around Quagmire's throat and starts to choke him. Here is where the episode delivers its one moment of actual character writing, the line that has stuck with fans for more than a decade. Jeff, choking the life out of Quagmire, sneers at him and says something along the lines of, "Nobody has ever choked him like this." And Quagmire, dying, says a single sentence back. He tells Jeff that he chokes himself every day. It is a Quagmire joke, a reference to the running gag about his private habits. But the way the episode plays it, it is not a joke. It is the last breath of a man who has spent his whole life being a walking punchline, suddenly finding inside himself something he did not know was there, something steadier than a joke, something that matches the situation. And then he gets to the car. Peter, somewhere in the background, has woken up. Peter's car is sitting nearby, keys still in it. Quagmire breaks loose from Jeff long enough to get behind the wheel. Jeff tries to run. Quagmire puts the car into gear and chases him through the woods. Jeff stumbles. Jeff runs. Jeff weaves through the trees. And Quagmire runs him down with the front of the car and pins him between the bumper and the trunk of a tree and keeps the pedal pressed and crushes him until Jeff is not moving anymore. Peter, who has caught up by now, watches it happen and says a small, confused line about how this is Brenda's brother, not really understanding what is going on. Jeff, in his last second, apparently manages the words, "What the hell? I killed you." Those are the last words he says. They are not clever. They are not funny. They are just a man in shock that someone finally hit back. And then he is dead, crushed into the tree. Quagmire sits in the driver's seat, breathing heavy. Peter stares. The show does not play a joke off the death. There is no cutaway to break the tension. There is no last-second eye-opening, the way Ernie the Giant Chicken used to do. There is no joke about the body. Jeff Fiegelman is gone. The man who hit Brenda with baseball bats and fists, the man who did not stop when she got pregnant, the man who dropped two of Quagmire's friends in a heartbeat and came within a breath of killing Quagmire too, has been killed by the front of a Toyota and a tree. There is a reason this death ranks so high on any serious list of characters in this show getting what they deserved. Almost nobody in Family Guy dies with this much weight. Diane Simmons gets a sniper bullet. Bertram gets a crossbow bolt. Ernie the Giant Chicken, after 25 years, gets his head torn off in the middle of a comic bit. All three of those deaths, as big as they are, happen inside the normal cartoon register of the show. Jeff's death does not. Jeff's death happens in an episode where the show has turned off most of its usual instruments. No cutaway, no cheerful music, no fourth wall wink. The animation is the same as always, but the way the scene is paced, the way the lines are delivered, the way the silence sits in the air after the car stops, it all moves at a slower, heavier speed than a Family Guy episode is supposed to move. That choice is what makes it a real ending instead of a joke ending. The show decided, for Jeff, that the violence he did to Brenda was serious enough that it deserved a serious exit. No comedy as a cushion, no trap door, just a grown man hitting a tree at 30 miles an hour, because the only person who could finally stop him was the brother of the woman he had been hurting. It is also worth saying plainly that what happens to Jeff does not happen to most abusers in the real world. Most of them are never punished. Most of them are never stopped. Most of the time, if someone is being hurt at home, the person hurting them continues to get away with it for years or forever. Part of the reason this episode gets talked about so much, and part of the reason it gets argued about so hotly, is that it shows a version of the story where the abuser loses, where the people around the person being hurt do something about it, where the ending is not sad and quiet and resigned, but loud and ugly and final. You can like that or dislike that. You can think the show earned it or did not earn it, but there is no denying that for every person watching who has known someone in a Brenda situation, there is something in that final image, Jeff pinned between a car and a tree, not moving, that lands in a way no cutaway gag ever has. Jeff Fiegelman gave the audience nothing. He was not charming. He was not funny. He was not smart. He did not have a plan. He did not have a twist. He was a man who hit a woman who loved him and who kept hitting her even when she was carrying his child, and who was so used to getting away with it that it never occurred to him that one day somebody was going to show up with a car and a grudge and finish him. The show gave him exactly the death that Shape of a Man earned. No less, no more. And then it moved on, and it barely ever spoke his name again. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But Jeff was a grown man with his hands around another grown man's throat. He used sighs and anger and fear, and he earned the end he got. The next name on this list never once picked up a weapon. She was a teenage girl in a high school hallway, and her worst crime was words. But across the course of 15 seasons, almost every single member of the Griffin family took a turn making her pay for them. Section 5. Connie D'Amico, the mean girl who never learns. Some characters in Family Guy get one big karmic moment and then disappear. One death, one humiliation, one final scene that closes the book on them for good, and the show moves on. Connie D'Amico is the opposite of that. Connie has been getting what she deserves, in small pieces and big pieces, for almost the entire run of the show. She has been the victim of Peter. She has been the victim of Stewie. She has been the victim of Brian. She has been the victim of Meg more than once. Every single main Griffin except Chris and Lois has at some point personally destroyed her in some way, and the show keeps bringing her back season after season so they can do it to her again. The running joke of Connie is that she never learns. She bullies Meg or she bullies somebody else, and the Griffin family punishes her for it. And a few episodes later, she is back at school tormenting Meg like nothing ever happened. The consequences never stick, but they keep happening, and the pile of them over 20 plus seasons is one of the most sustained karmic streaks the show has ever committed to. Connie first shows up in a first season episode called Let's Go to the Hop. She is the most popular girl at Adam West High School, head of the cheerleading squad, beautiful in the way cartoons draw beautiful high school girls, and openly mean to Meg from the very first scene. Her voice actor in that first appearance is Fairuza Balk, the actress famous for playing the scary witch in The Craft. From the second episode onward, Lisa Wilhoit takes over the role, and that is the Connie most people know. She has blonde hair, red lipstick, a crop top, a pair of pants that changes color every few seasons, and an attitude that stays exactly the same for 20 years. And the attitude is the thing. Connie is not subtle. Connie is not complicated. She is a high school mean girl, written big and drawn bigger. She picks on Meg because Meg is easy to pick on. She humiliates Meg in front of the whole school when she gets the chance. She makes fat jokes. She makes hygiene jokes. She leaves Meg out of things on purpose and then tells her about them afterward. She is the exact kind of person everybody has met at some point in their life, turned up a little louder and drawn a little meaner for television. The reason she becomes such a satisfying target is not just that she is cruel. It is that she is stupid in a very specific way. She keeps picking on Meg even after the Griffin family has shown her over and over again that picking on Meg has consequences. The whole town has been turned on her in half a dozen separate ways. She has been physically injured. She has been publicly humiliated. She has been arrested. She has been dragged out of her social standing in front of everyone she cares about. And still, a few episodes later, she will walk up to Meg in the hallway and call her ugly, and the whole cycle starts over. The first real beating she takes comes in a third season episode called Barely Legal. Meg has been humiliated at a school dance because of Connie, and Brian, drunk and furious, corners Connie at the punch bowl and delivers one of the most quoted speeches in the whole show. He tells her, to her face, that the only reason she is popular is because she developed early and started doing things with boys when she was way too young. He tells her that deep down, she cannot stand to look at herself in the mirror because she sees somebody she does not like. And then he tells her, very calmly, that by the time she turns 19, her looks will be gone, her body will be used up, and even her own stepfather will not want her anymore. He asks her if he is in the ballpark. She bursts into tears and runs out of the room. The scene is brutal. It is the kind of scene that, watched back today, makes some viewers uncomfortable because of how personal it gets. But inside the world of the show, it lands as karma, because everything Brian says is delivered as the other side of the exact mirror Connie has been holding up to Meg. Connie has spent 3 seasons telling Meg that nobody loves her, that she is ugly, that she is going to end up alone. Brian takes that same mirror and turns it around. It is the first time anybody in the show has pushed back on Connie with the same kind of cruelty she has been pushing onto Meg, and Connie cannot handle it. She runs. She cries. She is, for one moment, just a scared teenage girl who has finally heard the thing she has been afraid of her whole life. But she comes back, because Family Guy always brings her back, and that is the joke. The next big hit is in a season 7 episode called McStroke. Stewie, disguised as a teenager, tricks Connie into going out with him. She is interested because she thinks he is a cute new kid at her school. They end up in in a car together, and at some point she finds out he is actually a baby. Her reaction is to tell him to get out of the car, which is a fair reaction. But Stewie, furious at being rejected, stands up in the middle of the school parking lot and shouts to the entire student body that Connie was involved in something highly inappropriate. The crowd hears it, the rumor catches fire. The last scene Connie is in has her being arrested by the police, taken away in handcuffs, with the implication that she is being charged with a very serious offense. It is, once again, exactly the kind of social destruction Connie has spent years trying to inflict on Meg, aimed back at her with perfect accuracy. Then comes a season 6 episode called Peter's Daughter. Connie walks up to Meg, makes a fat joke at her expense, and does not notice Peter is standing right there. Peter grabs her by the head and drives her face into a glass fire extinguisher cabinet on the wall. Not once, several times. The cabinet glass cracks. Blood appears. The show does not play the moment as a gentle slapstick beat. It plays it as a father losing his temper in a way that is genuinely a little scary to watch. The joke is Peter's line right before he does it. A quiet, almost polite request for her to take a look at the fire extinguisher behind her. He smashes her face into it before she has time to turn her head all the way around. It is one of the most quoted Peter moments in the whole show, and it exists entirely because Connie could not resist one last fat joke at Meg. In a season 7 episode called Dial Meg for Murder, Meg does the revenge herself. She has just gotten out of a short stay in juvenile detention, and she is not the same girl who left. She walks up to Connie and her friends in the school hallway, and, carrying a bag of unopened soda cans, swings the bag like a club and knocks them all out cold. While Connie is unconscious on the floor, Meg kneels down and kisses her on the mouth. It is one of the most unexpected images the show has ever put on screen. A quiet, still shot of Meg having a moment of total control over the girl who has tortured her for years. And then Meg gets up and walks off, and the show moves on. Connie, when she wakes up, has no idea what happened to her. Connie even gets punished for being a bad friend. In a season 7 episode called Steroids, Chris becomes briefly popular, and Connie tries to date him as a joke, and then actually starts to like him. When the joke gets exposed and Chris turns the tables on her, she is knocked unconscious by Chris and 2 other girls. Peter, disgracefully, lies on top of her at the party afterward. Connie loses her social standing that night and has to come crawling to Meg for help. Meg, to her credit, eventually helps her get it back. Connie, to her discredit, barely thanks her and is back to bullying Meg a few episodes later. The show makes the point very clearly. Connie cannot be saved by kindness. It slides off her. She is not a person who learns. And then comes the final, biggest piece of karma, years later, in a season 20 episode called Connie's Celica. Lois takes a short job as a music teacher at Adam West High School. Connie, who is now a student in her class, hates her. Their clash comes to a head when Connie, in the middle of a lesson, tells Lois that she is terrible and throws a tomato at her in front of the entire class. That is the moment Connie crosses the line the show has been waiting for her to cross for 2 decades. Lois sends her to the principal's office. The school counts it as her 3rd strike. Connie is expelled. Not suspended, expelled. The thing the show had threatened to do to her for 20 years finally happens. Adam West High, the school she ruled, kicks her out and locks the door. What makes that moment sting, even for a character the audience has cheered against for years, is the size of the drop. Connie's entire identity was built on being the most popular girl at that school. She had no life outside of it. Her friends, her status, her power over Meg, all of it only existed inside those hallways. The second the school expels her, she is nothing. A later episode shows her working at a strip club. Another shows her living alone in a cabin in the woods for 2 years. Her name stops meaning anything. The queen has been pushed out of the palace, and she has no idea how to live anywhere else. The reason Connie is such a strong example of a character getting what she deserves is not any one of these individual hits. It is the pattern. The show could have let her bully Meg for a season and then quietly dropped her. Instead, Family Guy decided, very deliberately, to keep her around forever and to use her as a target that every member of the family could take a swing at when the opportunity came up. Peter smashed her face into a fire extinguisher. Stewie got her arrested for imaginary crimes. Brian broke her down with one of the meanest speeches the show ever wrote. Meg knocked her out with soda cans. Lois got her expelled from the only place she mattered. The show kept handing her back to the writers because it knew exactly what it wanted her for. She was the girl the audience was allowed to enjoy watching lose. There is also a quiet generosity, in a strange way, in the fact that the show keeps Connie alive. The bad characters who go all the way over the line. The Jeffs and the Dianes and the Bertrams end up dead. Connie, for all her cruelty, never does anything that earns her a permanent ending. She is mean, she is petty, she is vain. She is willfully blind to the fact that her behavior is going to come back on her. But she is not evil the way Jeff was evil. She does not murder anyone. She does not try to erase the universe. She is just a teenage girl who is really, really good at hurting another teenage girl's feelings. And Family Guy punishes her for it one chapter at a time instead of in a single final blow. She gets to live because her crimes, while ugly, are the size of crimes a real high schooler might commit. And the show lets the punishment match the crime in scale, over and over, for more than 20 years. In a way, Connie's story is the clearest answer to the lazy criticism that Family Guy is a show where nobody ever pays for anything. Connie has been paying the whole time. She has been paying since the first season. She just never figures out that she is paying, because the show resets her between episodes, and so each new humiliation hits her fresh. To her, it is always the first time. To the audience, it is the 20th, the 30th, the 50th. The cruelty piles up, and every viewer who has ever been the target of a mean girl gets to watch, slowly, across 2 decades, as the universe of Quahog makes this one blonde cheerleader answer for it. Her name means strong-willed. Her last name, in the language it comes from, means friend. Neither of those words has ever described her. But across 20-plus years of television, she has been forced to learn, one punishment at a time, that being the most popular girl in a small school is not the same thing as being a person other people actually want around. Connie D'Amico got what she deserved, and then she got it again, and then she got it again. The show never stopped giving it to her. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But for all her cruelty, Connie never pretended to be smart. She never claimed to be anything more than what she was. The next name on this list did. He spent years lecturing the rest of his family about books, politics, wine, and big ideas. And then he walked onto the set of a real talk show one night with a real host and a real audience. And he found out on live television exactly what happens when a fake intellectual meets a room full of real ones. Section 6. Brian Griffin, humiliated on Real Time with Bill Maher. Brian Griffin has a problem. It has been his problem since the first season, and the show has been quietly setting it up as his biggest character flaw for more than 20 years. The problem is simple. Brian believes deep in his bones that he is smarter than everybody else in the room. He acts like it, he talks like it, he lectures the rest of the Griffin family about books he has not actually read. He drops the names of writers and thinkers into everyday conversation the way other people drop weather comments. He corrects people's grammar. He rolls his eyes at Peter's stupidity. He is a dog in a house full of humans, and he has decided that his job in that house is to be the smartest one. The trouble is that he is not. He is smarter than Peter, sure. Most things are smarter than Peter. But Brian is not nearly as smart as he thinks he is, and the show has been picking away at that lie for years. Stewie, who is an actual genius, has been quietly aware of it the whole time. The two of them spend most of their scenes together in a dance, where Brian pretends to be in charge and Stewie lets him pretend, until Stewie gets bored and drops some little comment that reveals Brian has no idea what he is talking about. For a long time, those small cracks are all the show gives you. Brian loses a romantic relationship because he cannot stop quoting books he has not finished. Brian gets drunk and embarrasses himself at a party. Brian tries to write the great American novel, and nobody buys it. The humiliations are there, but they are scattered. They come one at a time. They can be laughed off and forgotten by the next episode. And then, in a season 9 episode called Brian Writes a Bestseller, the show finally decided it was time to collect the bill. The episode starts with Brian getting hit by a very specific kind of failure. Hundreds of boxes of his last book, a novel called Faster Than the Speed of Love, arrive at the Griffin house in stacks. The publisher is sending them all back because nobody bought them. The returns are so heavy that the floor of the house almost cannot hold them. Brian, staring at a mountain of his own unsold work, decides he is done being a writer. He gives up. Stewie is the one who gives him the idea that kicks off the whole mess. Brian is reading the bestseller list in the paper one morning and notices that a self-help book is sitting at the top of it. Some motivational nonsense with a catchy cover. The kind of book Brian would normally call garbage. Stewie, who has been watching Brian mope for a week, week, suggests that Brian write one of his own, just to prove that self-help books are empty junk that anybody can produce. Brian likes the idea because it lets him feel superior to the entire industry. He writes it in 3 hours. Not 3 months, not 3 weeks, 3 hours on a typewriter in one sitting while drinking. He calls it Wish It, Want It, Do It. The book is exactly as thin as you would expect a book written in one afternoon to be. It is full of empty slogans. It leaves entire pages blank so that readers can write their own thoughts on them, which is Brian's way of saying he could not be bothered to fill the pages himself. The whole thing is designed as a sneer. He wants it to fail. He wants to be able to point at it and say, look how stupid the world is. They would buy this junk. And then the world buys it in enormous numbers. It flies off the shelves. It hits the top of the bestseller list. Brian, who is ready to give a lecture about how dumb the reading public is, suddenly finds himself a rich and famous author of a book he does not respect. This is where the show tightens the screws. Brian hires Stewie as his personal assistant for the book tour. Stewie, a baby with an unusual number of connections in the publishing world, had been the one who helped get the book printed in the first place, so Brian pays him back by treating him like a servant. Brian's fame goes to his head within days. He starts acting like a star. He demands the best restaurants, he sleeps with young fans, he tells an overweight female reader he does not have time for her while flirting with the prettier woman standing behind her. He tells another fan, who refuses to sleep with him, that he hates her. He forgets to book the right table at the right restaurant and blames Stewie. He snaps at Stewie over nothing. He orders Stewie around like a secretary, instead of thanking him for the favor that built the whole tour. Stewie, to his credit, tries. He keeps everything running. He books the appearances. He arranges the transport. He smooths things over. He is not getting paid, and he is not getting thanked. He is just watching the closest thing he has to a friend turn into a jerk in real time. The whole thing is building to one specific booking. Stewie has gotten Brian the biggest interview of his life, a guest spot on a real-world talk show called Real Time with Bill Maher. The show exists in the real world as well as in the Family Guy universe. Bill Maher plays himself. The panel is supposed to include the writer Christopher Hitchens, who in real life was one of the sharpest arguers alive, a man who ate people for breakfast on television panels and did it with a smile. For Brian, a guy who has spent his whole life pretending to be a deep thinker, this is the dream booking. He gets to sit next to his idol and talk about separation of church and state, one of his favorite topics. Then, 2 hours before the show goes live, Stewie tells him that Hitchens cannot make it. The replacements are Ariana Huffington, a real political commentator, and Dana Gould, a real stand-up comedian. Brian loses it. He blames Stewie. He fires him on the spot. He storms off to do the show alone, even madder than he was before. Every ounce of ego he has built up in the last 2 weeks is in full bloom as he walks onto that stage. And then the stage eats him alive. The entire panel takes one look at Brian's book and starts tearing it apart. Bill Maher, who had been the one person Brian wanted to impress, asks him calmly how a self-help book about wanting things is supposed to help somebody with cancer or somebody in a war-torn country. Brian tries to laugh it off. Ariana Huffington jumps in and picks apart the shallow thinking in the book, chapter by chapter. Dana Gould hits him from another angle. Brian tries to insult Ariana's accent, throws her an old Hollywood nickname to try to make her seem silly, and she fires back by calling him Snoopy because he is a dog, and the whole panel laughs at him. Brian, flailing, starts mocking Dana Gould's first name, which sounds feminine to him, as if that is going to save the conversation. The panel keeps coming. They ask him what his book is actually for. They ask him what he was trying to accomplish. They ask him whether there is a single real thought on any of its pages. Brian, out of options, finally tells the truth. He tells them he wrote it in one day. He tells them he never took it seriously. He tells them that he too thinks it is junk, and he only wrote it to cash in, because he figured the audience was stupid enough to buy anything. Bill Maher leans back. The studio audience goes quiet, and then Maher, in the calmest voice he has used all night, tells Brian the thing that finishes him. He says that a real writer would stand by their own work, no matter what anybody else thinks of it. That a real writer does not go on television and abandon a book just because the panel is giving them a hard time. That what Brian has just done by throwing his own book under the bus to save his own skin is the single worst thing a writer can ever do. Brian realizes, in that moment, that he has failed the test in front of the one man he wanted to impress. Not on the question of the book, on the question of being a writer at all. He scrambles. He begs. He asks Maher, out loud, what Maher wants him to say. He offers to to say anything. He is a grown writer turning into a child in front of a live audience. And then, under the lights, panicked and stripped of every shred of the swagger he brought into the building, Brian wets himself on the couch. The camera holds on it. The stain spreads. Mar stares at him in pure disgust, grabs a rolled-up newspaper off the coffee table, and chases Brian off the set with it, the way you would chase a bad dog out of the kitchen. The dog, the writer, the intellectual, the man who came in to be taken seriously. Out the stage door, wet pants, rolled up paper swinging at his backside on national television. It is, without question, the single worst thing that has ever happened to Brian Griffin on the show. What makes it land as true karma, and not just a cruel joke at his expense, is that every single piece of the humiliation fits the crime. Brian was not punished for being a bad writer. He has been a bad writer for years. He was punished for being a fake, for writing a book he thought was junk and then acting like a literary giant, for treating Stewie like a servant, for bullying an overweight fan while flirting with the pretty one, for being kind to the people who could help his career and cruel to the ones who could not, for pretending to be a deep thinker in a room full of people who had earned the right to that title. The panel's job in that scene was to strip every one of those lies off him. Bill Maher, who in real life is not known for kindness, plays the scene straight. Ariana Huffington plays herself. Dana Gould plays himself. They are not doing bits. They are not doing cartoon gags. They are doing the thing that real people on real talk shows do when a fake shows up on their stage. They take him apart with his own words. And by the end of it, there is nothing left of Brian's act. No more big vocabulary, no more smug superiority. Just a dog in wet pants begging a host to tell him what to say, because he never actually had anything to say to begin with. The open wound does not even close cleanly after he gets off the stage. Brian goes home and tries to apologize to Stewie. The apology is a joke. It is not a real apology. He does not say he is sorry for being cruel. He does not say he is sorry for firing Stewie over somebody else's mistake. He says he is sorry that he had to work with somebody as incompetent as Stewie in the first place. That is the apology. It is a second failure on top of the first. Stewie looks at him, totally worn out, and says something along the lines of this being as good as it is going to get. Brian agrees that this is as good as it is going to get. Stewie then tells Brian to his face that Brian cannot write. Brian has no comeback. The screen fades. A lot of Family Guy fans consider this the single cleanest piece of character punishment the show has ever produced. And it is not because of the wet pants. It is because of what the episode is actually saying. Brian has been pretending to be something he is not for years. He has been looking down on his own family from a height he did not earn. He has been telling himself that his drinking is the drinking of a tortured artist, and that his relationships fail because women cannot handle his intelligence, and that his writing is unappreciated because the world is not ready for it. All of that gets vaporized in one scene. He is not a tortured artist. He is a bad writer who got lucky. The women were not wrong about him. The world saw the book for exactly what it was. He wasted his own opportunity, and he did it in front of the person he most wanted to see him as great. The reason this sits so high on any list of Family Guy karma is that it is not a joke punishment. It is not a cutaway. It is not a slapstick bit. It is a slow, public, personal dismantling of a character's entire fake self, delivered by a real-world host with real credibility in front of a real-looking audience. And it sticks. Not the way Diane sticks, or Bertram sticks, where the character is dead and gone. Brian is alive, but something in him, that night, is permanently gouged out. You can hear it in every episode of the show that comes after. When Brian tries to lecture somebody now, Stewie can shut him down with one line. When Brian tries to be deep, Peter can undercut it in 3 words. Bill Maher pulled the stuffing out of him on national television, and even years later, nobody quite hands it back. He deserved it, every second of it, and the show, for once, did not let him off the hook. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But Brian, for all his flaws, is at least a dog in a man's house trying to punch above his weight. The next name on this list is the man of the house himself. The big idiot in the white shirt and green pants, the father, the husband, the reason half the disasters in Quahog ever happen. He has gotten away with more across 25 seasons than any other character in the show, and the few times the universe has actually caught up with him, the moments when Peter Griffin has really, truly paid, are some of the most cathartic scenes the show has ever produced. Section 7. Peter Griffin, the No Meals on Wheels catastrophe, and other earned disasters. Most of the characters on this list got what they deserved in one big final moment. A bullet, a car, a crossbow, a fire extinguisher. extinguisher. Peter Griffin does not work that way. Peter is the engine of almost every bad thing that happens in Quahog, and the show knows it. A full accounting of every terrible thing Peter has done across 25 seasons would fill a book. He has set buildings on fire. He has beaten up children. He has almost killed his own wife multiple times. He has driven his son into the arms of a pedophile neighbor for comedy. He has, on any fair reading of the evidence, done enough to be locked in a prison cell for the rest of his life, and he is almost never punished. That is the deal the show made a long time ago. Peter is the engine, and an engine cannot be shut off, because if Peter actually paid for the things he did, the show would end. So the writers built a character who gets away with murder, literally, week after week. Most of the time, the universe just lets him walk. The couch is still there, the beer is still cold, the wife is still there in the morning. Nothing sticks. Which is exactly why the handful of episodes where the universe actually does catch up with Peter are so satisfying. When the show decides to make Peter pay, it really makes him pay. And it does it in a very specific way. The punishment always matches the crime in shape. Whatever cruelty or stupidity Peter was showing off, the universe finds the perfect way to hand it back to him. These are not random bad luck moments. These are karmic strikes, done on purpose, shaped like what Peter did to deserve them. The clearest example lives inside an episode called No Meals on Wheels. The title alone is the whole joke. Peter and Lois open their own restaurant together. The place is barely staying alive. Business is slow. Nobody comes in. Lois and Peter are starting to panic that they are going to go under. Then Joe, Peter's best friend, who uses a wheelchair, walks in with a group of his friends. His friends are also people with disabilities. Some of them use wheelchairs, some of them are blind, some of them have other visible conditions. Joe is doing Peter a favor by bringing them. He wants to help his friend's new business get off the ground. And the restaurant, for the first time, fills up. Joe's friends tell their friends, word spreads in the community, people with disabilities across the town start coming to Peter and Lois's restaurant because they have heard it is a welcoming place. For a few days, Peter is finally successful at something. The dining room is full, the kitchen is busy, the money is coming in. Peter, being Peter, cannot leave well enough alone. He decides, out loud, that he does not want people with disabilities eating in his restaurant. He thinks they are scaring away the attractive clientele he imagined the place would have. He wants them gone, so he bans them. He stands at the door and he turns Joe and Joe's friends away, in front of everybody, his own best friend, the man who saved his business. Peter throws him out because he does not want his customers to look like that. This is the Peter at his worst. Not funny, not cartoonish, just openly cruel to the people who helped him in the exact moment they needed him to show them basic respect. Joe's face when he realizes what Peter is doing is one of the few Joe reactions the show ever plays completely straight. And then the karma shows up, in a shape only Family Guy would come up with. Joe's friends refuse to accept it. They come back. Peter refuses to let them in. A fight breaks out. And in the middle of that fight, the group of disabled officers and citizens Peter has been rejecting do something impossible. They combine. Not like teammates, like a machine. Their wheelchairs lock together, their bodies slot into place. The whole group becomes one enormous robot, a giant fighting machine built out of the people Peter was too small-minded to serve a meal to. And that robot destroys his restaurant, smashes the walls, flattens the dining room, levels the building where Peter just tried to build a new life for his family. Peter ends up bloodied, bruised, and crushed under the rubble of his own business, which is sitting in a pile of splinters and glass because of a fight he started. The joke is absurd. A giant robot made of people in wheelchairs. That is a Family Guy joke. But underneath the absurdity is a perfect piece of karmic design. Peter thought he was better than the people Joe brought into his restaurant. The show's answer was to show him, in the clearest possible way, that the people he thought were less than him were together far more powerful than he could ever hope to be. He tried to make himself bigger by pushing them down. The universe responded by letting them become enormous. The size difference was the point. The restaurant dies that night. The business Lois built with Peter is gone. Peter is back to being just another guy working at the brewery. Everything he gained by being nice for a week is lost because he could not stay nice for one more week. The episode ends with him bruised and sorry, and Lois with nothing to show for all the work she put in. Peter got exactly the size of ending his cruelty earned. There's another episode that works the same way, one of the most quoted in the show's run, called "Are You There, God? It's Me, Peter." Well, the relevant scene is actually from a different episode, the one where Peter spends an entire weekend on the couch, eating junk food, drinking beer, watching television, and refusing to get up. Lois begs him to move. The kids ask ask him to move. He does not move. He decides that the couch is where he lives now. He eats meals lying down. He leaves crumbs and grease on his own skin. He does not shower. He does not change his clothes. He lets himself become one with the furniture because the only thing he cares about is not being bothered by anything. And then the universe catches up with him in the exact shape of his own laziness. His body fuses to the couch, the fabric, the stains, the sweat. All of it binds to his skin so completely that he cannot stand up anymore. He becomes physically attached to the piece of furniture he refused to leave. He has to be peeled off. Doctors are called. The couch comes to the hospital with him. He spends the episode learning, in the most humiliating way possible, that a body is not designed to be left in one place for days at a time, and that there is a real physical cost to being the laziest man in town. That is karma, written with a ruler and a calculator. Peter treated himself like a piece of furniture. The universe took him at his word and turned him into one. He wanted to be a couch. For a little while, he was. There is a third episode that deserves a place on this list, called Peter Problems. Peter has been working at the brewery for years at the point when this one airs. He is a bad employee in every measurable way. He does not pay attention. He does not take his job seriously. He treats the warehouse like a playground. And then, against every reasonable expectation, he gets a promotion. He is put in charge of a forklift, which is a large piece of lifting machinery used to move heavy pallets of beer around the warehouse. The previous operator has retired. Peter, who has no business operating a forklift, is the one given the keys. He immediately misuses it. He drives the forklift around for fun. He lifts his friends up to the ceiling with it. He uses it to grab things he should not be grabbing. The breaking point is when he tries to use the forklift to save a whale that has beached itself on the local shoreline. The plan is to drive the forklift out onto the sand, hook the whale up, and push it back into the water. What actually happens is that Peter, being Peter, drives the forks right through the whale. The animal he was trying to save dies horribly by his own hand in public. Then, not long after, he accidentally crashes the forklift straight through the wall of a company meeting, destroying the office. Peter is fired. The karma there is narrower, but just as clean. Peter was handed something he did not deserve. A promotion at a job he had been mocking for years. And within days, he had killed a whale and wrecked a meeting room. He abused the tool the moment it was handed to him, and the tool got taken away. That is the shape of it. Peter was not punished for being stupid. He was punished for thinking he could keep being stupid and have something like power anyway. The universe told him no. The forklift went back in the warehouse. His office privileges were gone. There is a fourth episode called Whistle While Your Wife Works that does something similar with Peter's body. Quagmire comes back from a trip to Florida with a bunch of fireworks. Peter decides to play with them, even though every person with half a brain would not. He lights one the wrong way. It explodes in his hand. He loses several fingers. He spends most of the episode with bandages on his hand, trying and failing to do basic things like eat cereal or button a shirt, while Lois has to feed him and dress him like a child. It is one of the more physically uncomfortable runs of the show, because the show keeps reminding you every few minutes that Peter is missing pieces of his own hand because he would not listen to a single person telling him to stop. The fireworks injury is the show in its simplest karmic mode. A grown man playing with a dangerous thing he was warned about, losing fingers, and then living with it for a whole episode. There is even one called A Shot in the Dark that deserves a mention, because it contains something almost unheard of in Family Guy. Lois beating Peter with a magazine. Peter comes home and announces that his next brilliant idea is to go into the middle of town, take his clothes off, paint himself brown, and walk around pretending to understand the experience of being a black man. He wants to do this because he accidentally shot Cleveland Jr. in a separate plotline and is trying to make up for it in the worst possible way. Lois, who has spent years absorbing Peter's ideas without pushing back, finally snaps. She grabs a magazine. She hits him with it. She keeps hitting him. She shouts at him about why he always does stupid things and why he always announces them to her first and why he is trying to get a rise out of her. She beats him down in the kitchen with a rolled up magazine in front of the kids while yelling all the things the audience has been yelling at him for 20 seasons. That scene exists in part because the writers know how much the audience has been waiting for it. Peter gets away with so much that anytime Lois actually holds him accountable, it feels like a holiday. A Shot in the Dark is the episode where she finally does it, and the show plays the moment completely straight. Peter does not make a cutaway joke during the beating. He does not laugh it off afterward. He shuts up and he takes it, because even he, in that moment, understands that he has earned it. Now, Now, none of these moments add up to a full reckoning. Peter gets out of every one of them. The restaurant is gone, but he still has his job at the brewery by the next episode. His fingers grow back, he unsticks from the couch, he gets rehired at the forklift job eventually.
The show resets him every time because the show has to. If Peter actually paid the full price for any single one of his crimes, the show would collapse. So these moments are not endings, they are punctuation marks. But that is the point. Peter is a karma Houdini, as the internet likes to call him. He is a man who walks away from almost everything he breaks, which means every single time he does not walk away, every single time the show decides to let the universe land one punch on him, that punch matters more. A giant robot made of the disabled people he rejected, a couch that physically ate him, a forklift job taken away after he killed a whale, fingers blown off because he would not listen, a rolled up magazine swung by the wife he never takes seriously, right across the face he deserves it on. Those are small justices stacked up across 25 years. They are not enough, but they are more than nothing. And in the strange moral world of Family Guy, where the usual rules of consequence do not apply, a small justice delivered with exactly the right shape is still a justice. The show makes you wait for them. When they come, they hit clean. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But Peter is the one the show protects. He is the one the writers have to keep in place, because the show is built on his shoulders. The woman who married him, the one who has spent 25 seasons acting like she is the responsible adult in the house, while quietly hiding a past she does not want her children to know about, is a different story. She has been lectured to. She has been lectured down. She has been treated by the show as the steady center of a family that cannot stay standing. And then, in one episode, she walked into a grocery store, stole a ham, and everything she had built about herself started to come apart. Section 8. Lois Griffin, the kleptomaniac in prison. Lois Griffin has spent 25 years on this show, holding herself up as the one adult in the Griffin house. She is the mom. She is the voice of reason. She is the one who rolls her eyes at Peter's stupidity, who tries to stop the worst of his schemes before they leave the kitchen, who tells the kids to behave and the dog to calm down and the baby to go to bed. That is her job in the grammar of the show. Peter is the chaos. Lois is the grown-up who is supposed to contain it. The problem, which the show has been slowly leaking across the run, is that Lois is lying. Not once in a while, all the time, about who she is, about what she has done, about the kind of person she actually is under the surface of the steady housewife in the green pants. And twice across the run of the show, those lies have caught up with her in two very different ways. Once, she got sent to prison. Once, her own daughter read her life back to her in front of the whole family and made her cry. Those two episodes, placed next to each other, are the show's most sustained karmic reckoning with its own mother character. The first one is a season 4 episode called Breaking Out is Hard to Do. The setup is small. Lois is at the grocery store. She grabs the things on her list. She gets to the register, and she realizes she does not have enough money to pay for everything in her cart. That happens to a lot of people. Most people put something back. Lois says she will return a ham to the meat department, and then, on her way there, she slides it into her purse and walks out of the store with it. Something happens to her in that moment. The show lets you see it on her face. It is not guilt. It is excitement. It is a rush she did not know was available to her. Stealing the ham felt good. Stealing the ham felt like the most alive she has been in years. So she does it again and again. At smaller stores, at bigger stores, at high-end shops. She starts pocketing things just to pocket them. Jewelry, clothes, items she does not want and does not need. The show gives her a full-on sickness, the real kind. The kind where a person steals not for money, but for the chemical kick of getting away with it. She hides the stuff in her closet. She stuffs her stolen haul into drawers Peter never looks in. Her secret collection grows. What makes this a karmic setup is who Lois has been for the previous 3 seasons. She is the one who lectures Meg about being a good person. She is the one who tells Chris to tell the truth. She is the one who makes Peter feel guilty for every dumb thing he does by looking at him a certain way over her coffee. She has built an entire identity as the moral compass of the Griffin house. And here she is, a few weeks into her new hobby, sitting in her bedroom, surrounded by stolen goods, unable to stop, lying to her family every single day about where she has been and what she has been doing. Brian is the first one to figure it out. He confronts her. She actually listens to him. She admits it out loud. She describes the feeling of it in one of the more honest lines the character ever gets, saying that the stealing was filling some kind of hole in her life that she could not explain. She says she was sick of the same old routine. She agrees to stop. She agrees to return everything. Brian tells her that it is a good thing she quit before she got caught. The next knock on the door is Joe. He is there to arrest her. Lois gets caught in the act of deciding to do the right thing, and the show refuses to let her off the hook for the sentence just because her heart was in the right place in the final 5 minutes. It does not matter that she was going to return everything. She stole it all in the first place. The courtroom scene is where the karma sharpens into something even harder. The judge, a man named Dignified Q. Blackman, sentences her to 2 years in state prison. Peter starts yelling in the audience. The judge warns him to shut up. Peter keeps yelling. The judge bumps the sentence to 3 years. Peter sneezes at the wrong moment. The judge bumps it to 4. Peter apologizes, flustered. The judge bumps it to 5. Peter calls the judge a name. The judge, amused, kicks it back down to 3. But the damage is done. Lois is going to prison because she could not stop stealing, and her husband is making the whole thing worse in real time in front of everyone. She goes in. She serves actual time. The Griffin house, in her absence, falls apart in a way that tells you exactly how much Lois had been holding together without getting any credit for it. The place turns into a filthy wreck within days. Peter cannot take care of the kids. The kids cannot take care of themselves. The dog is miserable. The baby is plotting. Everyone misses her. And then, in classic Family Guy fashion, Peter breaks her out of prison by smuggling her out in his mouth during a visit, which is one of the weirder images the show has ever put on screen. The rest of the episode turns into a chase. The family goes on the run. They end up in a run-down neighborhood on the far side of town, living under fake names, trying to start over. Joe eventually tracks them down. Lois, in the last act, makes a decision that matters. She gives up. She turns herself in to save her family from being dragged any further into her mess. In the act of giving up, she also saves Joe's life when he slips off a ledge. Joe, grateful, eventually manages to get her sentence wiped out. She gets to go home. That is a happy ending on the surface. The show gave her an out, but notice what it did not do. It did not pretend the stealing never happened. Lois Griffin, the mother of the Griffin house, is now on record forever as a kleptomaniac who went to state prison. The show could have brushed that under the rug. Family Guy brushes things under the rug constantly. But the writers chose instead to keep it in the character's history and drag it out again whenever they needed to show the audience that Lois was not the clean-hearted angel she liked to pretend to be. That decision pays off in an even bigger way in a season 10 episode called Seahorse Seashell Party. This is one of the most argued about episodes in the whole show, partly because of its ending, but also partly because of what happens in the middle of it. A hurricane is hitting Quahog. The power goes out. The Griffins are stuck in the house with nothing to do. Brian, in the side story, is tripping on mushrooms in the bathroom and having a long, surreal nightmare. The rest of the family is in the living room, trying to pass the time, and picking on Meg, teasing her, excluding her, treating her, as they have for more than a decade of television at that point, like the family garbage can for every frustration they cannot aim at anyone else. Meg finally snaps, and the speech she gives is one of the most memorable monologues the show has ever produced. She goes after Chris first, for never once standing up for her as a brother, even when she has been on the receiving end of every cruel joke in the house. Then she turns on Lois. This is the moment that connects back to breaking out is hard to do, and it is the moment that puts the karma back in Lois's face after all those years. Lois tries to defend herself. She tells Meg that she is taking her problems out on the wrong person, and Meg, calm and furious at the same time, simply lists what Lois actually is: a shoplifter, a former drug user, a former pornographic model, a woman who once slept around in a way that does not match the moral high ground she likes to sit on. Meg points out that her mother is not the stable moral center of anything. Her mother is a woman with a long, messy past who has spent years hiding it from her own children. Lois, in that moment, does something she almost never does. She starts to cry. Not movie crying. Real, ugly, helpless tears. She tries to stammer out a defense. She tells Meg that all of those things are in the past. She tells her she is a better person now because of those experiences. And Meg looks her right in the face and asks her, flatly, if she really is a better person. If all of that growing she claims she did actually happened. Lois cannot answer. She just cries harder. That scene, maybe more than any other scene in the show, is the karmic payoff for Lois's entire run as a character. Every time she has lectured Meg about dress, about boys, about confidence, about what a good girl looks like. Every time she has rolled her eyes at Peter for being an embarrassment. Every time she has acted like the clean one while sweeping her own record under the rug. All of it gets dragged back out in front of the whole family family by the one person she thought she could always push around. Meg does not stop with Lois. She goes after Peter next, calling him a waste of a man, pointing out that in the real world he would be in prison for the way he has treated his own daughter, and finishing him off with a phrase that reduces him to silence for the first time in the show's history. Peter goes upstairs and cries in the bathroom. Lois refuses to comfort him because he did not comfort her, and the two of them sit on opposite sides of the house, broken, while their daughter stands in the middle of the living room, having finally told the truth. What is interesting, and what makes this count as karma instead of just a hurt feelings episode, is the shape of what Meg says. Every single thing she says about Lois is true. The show has never denied any of it. The shoplifting is canon. The drug use is canon, mentioned in multiple episodes. The modeling, the sleeping around, the wild youth, all of that has been in the show for years, dropped as little jokes in the background of other storylines. Meg did not make any of it up. She just collected it. She collected 20 years of little revelations that the show had been quietly planting, and she read the whole list back to her mother in one sitting. That is why Lois cries. Not because it hurts, because it is all true, because there is no comeback. Because the honest inventory of her life, said out loud, is a list she has been running from since the first time she called Meg a bad girl for wearing the wrong outfit. Those two episodes work as a pair, and they work as karma in a way that the show does not often commit to for a main character. In the first one, Lois is punished externally. She goes to prison. She pays the price, at least for a few weeks, in front of her family and the law. In the second one, she is punished internally. Her own daughter, the one she has spent a decade treating as a nuisance, becomes the mirror that finally shows her who she actually is. Prison time is only one kind of sentence. Being seen clearly by the people you have been lying to is another. And Family Guy, to its credit, does not let her off the hook in either case. Prison is real. She serves time. The later mockery by Meg is real. She cries. The show resets her eventually, because it has to, because the show always resets. But the record is in the show's memory forever. Every time a new episode plays her as the moral voice of the house, there are hundreds of old episodes sitting in the background that remember her as the woman who got addicted to the rush of stealing, the woman who broke down sobbing when her daughter listed her history out loud, the woman whose own past was the one thing she could never outrun. What makes it karmic is the size match. Lois did not do enormous evil. She did not kill 5 people at a dinner party. She did not beat a pregnant woman. She did not try to erase a universe. Her crimes were ordinary. A small addiction to theft, a loud, steady refusal to be honest with her kids about who she was before she had them. The punishments she earned matched that size. A short prison stint, undone by a lucky save. A 20-minute living room speech from her own teenage daughter. Family-sized crimes. Family-sized justice. And in a show famous for never finishing what it starts, those two episodes do finish something. They finish the lie Lois was telling about herself. She can still play the mom role. She can still lecture. She can still look at Peter like he is the only embarrassment in the house. But the audience knows, and somewhere deep down she knows, that the act is just an act. The show took her to prison and brought her home. The show let her daughter hold up the mirror and made her look. And then the show let life go on, the way life goes on for anyone whose secrets get said out loud. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But Lois, for all her hidden mess, was hiding the mess of one person, one woman, one life. The next name on this list is a reveal of a different kind. A family secret so big it had been locked up in a building for decades. A member of the Pewterschmidt family that Lois did not even know existed until her adulthood. A brother kept out of sight for reasons the show would turn out to make horribly specific. Section 9. Patrick Pewterschmidt, the fat guy strangler, returned to the asylum. Most of the karmic moments on this list are clean. One person does something bad, the universe, or another person, hits them back for it. The math works out. The ledger closes. Patrick Pewterschmidt is different. Patrick is a karmic event that runs in more than one direction at the same time. He is the villain of his own story, and he also earned the punishment he gets at the end of it. But he is also a victim. The same episode that locks him back in an asylum for the rest of his life is also the episode that shows you, in ugly detail, how he ended up as a killer in the first place. The show does something rare here. It gives you a murderer who you are not supposed to hate, a monster whose own family built him, and the karma that lands on him at the end of the episode lands, indirectly, on the father who hid him away for 30 years. Patrick is the star of a season 4 episode called The Fat Guy Strangler. He is voiced by Robert Downey Jr. Jr., the actor from the Iron Man movies, which is the kind of guest star the show pulled in during the middle of its run. His appearance in this one episode has made him one of the most memorable single-episode characters the show has ever produced. The story starts with Lois staring at an old family photograph and noticing a face in it she does not recognize. A boy standing next to her and her sister in what looks like a family portrait from her childhood. She asks her parents about it. Her mother, Babs, freezes. Her father, Carter, tries to brush it off. Lois pushes, and the truth finally comes out. Lois has a brother, an older brother. His name is Patrick. He has been alive this entire time, and no one in her family has ever told her about him.
The reason for the secrecy is grim. When Patrick was young, he walked in on his mother doing something very private with a large man named Jackie Gleason, who was a real-life television star from the 1950s and 60s. The image burned itself into Patrick's head in a way that his young mind could not process. He had a full mental breakdown. In his broken logic, the cause of his pain was not what his mother was doing, and not the situation he had walked in on. The cause was the size of the man. The man was fat. Patrick's mind fused the shock he felt with the body type of the man he had seen, and he started to believe that fat people were dangerous, that fat people were bad, that fat people needed to be stopped. Carter, instead of getting his son real help, had him locked away. Patrick was sent to Brookfield, a mental institution, and Carter told his other two daughters that Patrick had never existed for 30 years. For 30 years, Lois did not know she had a brother. For 30 years, Patrick sat in a locked ward while his own father pretended he had never been born. The secret ran that deep. Carter's whole response to having a son who needed help was to erase the son from the family history and hope nobody ever asked. Lois, furious at being lied to for her whole life, decides to bring Patrick home. She gets him a temporary release from Brookfield. She takes him to the Griffin house. She introduces him to Peter and the kids. She tries, in the messy, well-meaning way Lois tries at a lot of things, to fix what her father broke. She wants her brother to have a family. She wants to give him the decades of closeness that were stolen from both of them. And for a while, it looks like it is working. Patrick is gentle. Patrick is polite. Patrick has an invisible wife named Marion, who only he can see, but he talks to her with real love. He is strange, but he seems harmless. He is clearly damaged, but he is trying. Lois is proud of herself. She thinks she has pulled off a good deed. The show lets her believe that for about half the episode. Then, the twist comes in. People around Quahog start dying, specifically overweight men. The police are calling it the fat guy strangler case. Bodies keep turning up. News reports roll in. The victims all share one thing in common. They are all members of a group that advocates for the rights of overweight people, called NAAFP. Someone is going down the membership list and killing them, one at a time, by strangling them with bare hands. The whole town is scared. Nobody can figure out who it is. Brian is the one who puts it together. He starts noticing little things about Patrick. The way he reacts to large men. The way he disappears for stretches of time at night. The way his alibi never quite adds up. Brian finds a box of photographs hidden in Patrick's room. Polaroid pictures of his victims. Dozens of them. Some shots taken before the kill. Some shots taken after. Patrick has been keeping souvenirs of every single murder. When Brian confronts Lois with what he found, Lois does not want to believe it. This is her brother. The brother her father hid from her. The brother she only just got back. She has spent weeks telling herself she is making up for years of cruelty by bringing him home. Now the dog is standing in her kitchen telling her he is the fat guy strangler, and the evidence is in a box upstairs. The final fight is small and ugly and takes place in the Griffin house. Peter, the biggest man in the room, is the obvious next target. Patrick, triggered by something specific, finally snaps and tries to kill him. The show plays this seriously. Patrick's hands close around Peter's neck. He has the strength of someone who has killed more than 70 men this way. He is not messing around. Peter, the show's main character, is a few seconds from being the strangler's next body. Peter does not escape on his own. He escapes because Lois and the others step in and pull Patrick off him. They bring him down. They call Joe, and Patrick goes back to Brookfield. By the time the final count is done, the show has told you that Patrick killed at least 72 overweight men, all strangled, all trophies in his collection. 72. Not in a war, not in a movie, in a single episode's worth of off-screen killings, during a short release from a mental hospital where he had been kept under lock and key. That is the depth of what he had been doing. That is the scope of what Lois's good intentions let out into the world. The karma in this story works in 3 separate directions at once, and that is what makes it unusual for this show. The first direction is on Patrick himself. He killed 72 people. He tried to kill his own brother-in-law. He deserved to be contained permanently for the rest of his life. The ending of
of the episode puts him back in Brookfield, where he will stay. The show is careful about this. He is not punished like a villain in a cartoon. He is not laughed out of the house. He is returned, gently, to the place he should never have left. The punishment matches the crime, because the punishment is also, in a sense, what he needed. He was sick. He needed to be in a place that could hold him safely, both for him and for the people around him. Going back to Brookfield is the right answer for the crimes he committed. It is also the right answer for the person he is. The two things line up. The second direction is on Carter Pewterschmidt. Carter is the man who hid Patrick from his own family for 30 years. Carter is the man who chose embarrassment over his own son's well-being. Carter is the man who looked at a boy in crisis and decided the easier path was to pretend he had never been born. Everything that Patrick did during his brief release, every one of those 72 strangled men, plus the attempt on Peter's life, traces back to Carter's choice. If Carter had gotten his son real help instead of locking him away and forgetting him, Patrick might have had a chance. If Carter had not treated mental illness like a stain on the family name, the Pewterschmidt household might have had a very different last few decades. The show does not explicitly punish Carter in this episode. There is no scene where somebody sits him down and tells him this is his fault, but it does not need to. The entire shape of the episode is the indictment. Lois looks at her father with different eyes by the end of it. She understands, for the first time, what kind of man he really is. A man who could do this to his own blood. A man who could sit in a big house eating fine meals for 30 years while his son sat alone in a locked ward with nobody visiting. Carter is not killed. Carter is not jailed. Carter is exposed in a quieter way. His daughter finally sees him. The secret he kept for 3 decades is out. His son is back where he belongs, but only after doing enormous damage. And every bit of that damage is a mirror Carter now has to look at for the rest of his life. The third direction is one the show does not often play with, and it is the most uncomfortable one. Peter is the one who accidentally causes Patrick's final break. The trigger that sets off the strangling attempt is a Jackie Gleason impression. Peter, earlier in the episode, does a version of Jackie Gleason to be funny. Gleason was a real old-time television star, large and loud. Peter does the voice, does the catchphrase, puffs his chest out, and something in Patrick's brain, which had been holding together for weeks, cracks open. The trauma that first broke him as a child comes rushing back. The thing he has spent 30 years trying to wall off is suddenly in his living room, in the form of a loud fat man doing a silly voice. That is why the killings get worse. That is why Patrick turns on Peter. This is a dark piece of writing. The show is saying, quietly, that Peter is the one who lit the fuse. Not on purpose, not with any malice. He was just being Peter, but his carelessness, his inability to stop doing bits, ever, even in the presence of a fragile man who has just come out of a mental institution, is what pushed a man who was barely holding it together into becoming a serial killer. That is karma of a different flavor. Peter does not get a bloody nose or a ruined restaurant at the end of this one. What he gets is the knowledge, if he has the depth to feel it, that his cluelessness nearly cost him his own life. His Jackie Gleason impression ended with Patrick's hands around his throat. Peter's foolishness finally met a consequence big enough to kill him, and only the people around him saved him. That is a small, quiet kind of payback for a man who usually coasts through everything without a scratch. What makes The Fat Guy Strangler stand up as a karmic episode years after it first aired is how layered it is. Patrick earns his ending. Carter earns his exposure. Peter earns his near death. And the only one who walks out of the episode completely clean is Lois, who tried to do the right thing and got burned for it. That is not clean storytelling. That is a real, messy, grown-up ending where good intentions are not enough, and every single adult in the room is responsible for some piece of what went wrong. Robert Downey Jr.'s performance is what sells the whole thing. Patrick does not sound like a cartoon villain. He sounds like a man. A broken, quiet, wounded man who has somehow found a way to give his broken mind a mission. When he talks to his invisible wife, Marion, he is gentle. When he strangles a man, he is calm. The show trusts the audience to hold those two versions of him in their head at the same time. Not to forgive him, not to excuse him, but to see him clearly. And the sentence the show gives him at the end matches what the show has shown you. He goes back to Brookfield, not to prison, not to a grave, to the mental hospital he should never have left. The show even tells you in a brief closing note that the Griffins visit him once a month. They do not abandon him the way Carter did. They do not pretend he never existed. They keep him inside the family, behind safe walls, where he belongs and where he cannot hurt anybody else. That is the best possible ending for a character like Patrick. The ugliest crime count is met with the most humane sentence. Not revenge, containment. The universe of Quahog decided that Patrick needed to be stopped and cared for, in that order, and that his father had to see his own son again after pretending for 30 years that he did not have one. The karma settled around all of them, in a web, and nobody came out of that episode exactly the same as they walked in. The show has rarely been this careful with a guest character, and it has rarely matched a punishment exactly to the shape of a life. Patrick Pewterschmidt killed 72 men, and then went home to the only place that could safely hold him, while the man who built him had to stand in his own house and accept that his secret had been a monster all along. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But Patrick, for all the damage he did, had at least been a hidden secret, a family disgrace kept in a back room, only released by accident. The last name on this list is someone the show let walk around in public as often as it wanted to, a real-world celebrity, playing a theatrical version of himself, who walked into the Griffin family's life twice and tried to destroy it, and who was sent away, both times, by the exact same stupid trick. Section 10. James Woods, twice trapped in a crate with Reese's Pieces. Every villain on this list so far has fallen for a different reason. Diane was undone by her own rage. Ernie was undone by the grudge he would not let go of. Bertram was undone by the very weapon he brought with him. Jeff was undone by the size of the man he finally picked the wrong fight with. Connie has been undone by 20 years of refusing to learn. Brian was undone by the lie he was telling about himself. Peter was undone by the cruelty he could not hold back. Lois was undone by the truth she could not outrun. Patrick was undone by a childhood nobody ever fixed. James Woods was undone by a piece of candy twice. That is the whole joke. That is the whole karma. A real-world actor playing an evil cartoon version of himself walked into the Griffin family's orbit twice across the show's run, and both times he was beaten the exact same way. A trail of Reese's Pieces laid out on the ground, leading into a wooden crate. And both times, James Woods, who is supposed to be one of the smartest men in Hollywood in the show's world, hopped along that trail picking up candy in a state of pure childlike joy, until the trail ended inside a box, and the box slammed shut on him, and he got shipped off to a government warehouse to be studied by top men. The first time happens in a season 4 episode called Peter's Got Woods. Brian falls in love with a black school teacher named Shauna, and he gets the idea to petition the town to rename the local high school. The school is currently named after James Woods. Brian thinks it should be named after Martin Luther King Jr. instead. Peter, being Peter, thinks the name should stay the same. He tracks down James Woods himself and brings the actor to the meeting, hoping Woods will fight to keep the name. Woods, surprisingly, agrees with Brian and supports the renaming. His fake humility actually charms the school board enough that they vote to keep the school named after him anyway. Peter, impressed, makes James Woods his new best friend. Brian, hurt, watches from the outside as his oldest friend replaces him with a movie star. Peter and James hang out, go to parties, sing songs from old musicals together. Things fall apart when Brian and Peter eventually reconcile, and James, now the third wheel, does not take it well. He becomes obsessive. He starts showing up places he is not wanted. He pushes too hard. He will not go away. He is the bad kind of friend who becomes a stalker the moment you try to step back from him. So Peter and Brian come up with a plan. They lay out a trail of Reese's Pieces, the peanut butter candy in the orange and yellow wrapper, the same kind of trail the little alien in the old movie E.T. followed to its new friend's house. Except in this version, the trail is bait. James Woods shows up. He sees the first piece. He gasps in delight. "Ooh, a piece of candy," he says, and he picks it up and eats it. He sees the second piece a few feet away. "Ooh, a piece of candy." He picks it up and eats it. The third piece. "Ooh, a piece of candy." The fourth. The fifth. Every time he sees one, he reacts like it is the first piece of candy he has ever seen in his life. He hops along, collecting them, mouth happy, until he hops directly into a large wooden crate sitting open at the end of the trail. Peter and Brian slam the lid shut on him. They nail it down. They ship the crate to a government warehouse, where the last shot of the episode shows the box being wheeled into a hangar filled with hundreds of identical crates, never to be opened again, to be studied by top men. Top men. That is the ending. An acclaimed actor playing a giant version of his own vanity, beaten by the oldest trick in the animated kids movie handbook. Now, any normal show would leave it there. The trick worked. The villain is gone. Move on. Family Guy did not leave it there. 4 seasons later, in a season 6 episode called Back to the Woods, the show decided to do the entire thing over again. And the genius of the second episode is that the only way it could work is if James Woods, the smartest looking villain in the show's rogues gallery, is actually actually just as dumb as anyone else who gets beaten in Quahog. The second episode starts with Peter losing his wallet at a Barry Manilow concert. The wallet falls out of his pocket, and someone picks it up. That someone turns out to be James Woods, freshly escaped from his crate. Woods is furious. He spent the years between episodes locked in a box in a warehouse. He has one thing on his mind, which is revenge on Peter Griffin.
And he has Peter's wallet, which gives him a passport, a driver's license, a social security card, and the legal title to the house. So Woods uses it all. He does not just ruin Peter's credit. He steals Peter's entire identity. He shows up at the Griffin house with Peter's documents. He calls the police on Peter, pretending to be Peter, and reports Peter as a trespasser. Joe, the family's best friend, shows up to handle it. James Woods shows Joe the paperwork. Driver's license, passport, property title. Everything says Peter Griffin. Joe looks at the real Peter standing there in confusion and, bound by the paperwork, tells the real Peter he has to leave. The real Peter gets kicked out of his own home, stripped of his own clothes, which James demands back, and walks out into the street naked, while James Woods settles into Peter's couch and starts eating Peter's food. The show even has James insult Brian on his way past, calling him an outside dog, and having him tied to a post in the yard, while Brian tries to remind everybody that he went to a fancy college and does not deserve this. This is the worst thing that has ever happened to Peter. His home, his family, his friends, and his own name, all stolen by a man he thought he had locked away forever. This is the high point of James Woods as a villain. He has won. He is in the house. He is drinking the beer. Peter is sleeping in a hotel and eating cheap Chinese food and crying. Brian, thinking clearly for once, points out that Peter has the same weapon available to him that James used. If James can steal Peter's identity, Peter can steal James's identity right back. Stewie, who can forge documents, makes Peter a fake ID. Peter walks onto the set of The Late Show with David Letterman, claiming to be James Woods, and destroys the real James Woods' reputation in a single appearance. He announces on live television that he is starring in a comedy film about the 9/11 terrorist attacks, with David Spade voicing the airplane. The audience recoils. Letterman is disgusted. Within minutes, the whole country decides James Woods is the most hated actor in Hollywood. His career is over. His fans are gone. His name is poison. The real James Woods, watching from the Griffin house, loses his mind. He grabs a shotgun and goes looking for Peter. He is ready to kill. He is armed. He is furious. He is at the peak of his power and at the edge of his control. And then Peter and Brian, who have been planning all day, set out a trail of Reese's Pieces on the ground, out in the open, in a straight line, leading into another wooden crate. James Woods, a full adult, an actor, a man who has just outsmarted the entire Griffin family, takes one look at the trail and forgets every single thing he came here for. Ooh, a piece of candy. He leans over and picks it up. Ooh, a piece of candy. He picks up the next one. Ooh, a piece of candy. He keeps hopping along, happy as a child, until he steps directly into another crate, and the lid slams down, and the crate is nailed shut and shipped off to the same warehouse with the same top men. The second crate sits next to the first crate. James Woods is back in the box he spent years trying to escape from. Peter, standing over the trail of candy, turns to Brian and reminds him that they need to remember this trick for next time. They do not even pretend anymore that the trick is clever. They know it is stupid. They know it is a cartoon gag from an old movie. They know the candy is not even an expensive kind of candy. And they know with absolute certainty that James Woods will fall for it again the next time he is let out of a box. Because that is who James Woods is in this universe. A man whose entire personality is stitched together out of vanity and cravings, and who cannot resist a little treat put in front of his face, even when the last piece of candy he ate ruined his entire life. That is the karma. Not a dramatic death, not a sniper bullet, not a tree crushing him under a car. James Woods gets something in some ways worse than any of those. He gets to live forever as the man who fell for the same trick twice, as the villain who escaped a crate only to walk right back into another one, as the proof that in Quahog, the difference between winning and losing is not intelligence, it is not power, it is whether or not you can walk past a little piece of candy on the ground. His crimes were not small. He ruined people's lives. He stole a man's entire identity. He kicked a family out of their own house. He pointed a shotgun at a neighbor. He was, across 2 full episodes, one of the nastiest villains the show ever produced. And his punishment for all of that was to be outsmarted by a candy trail twice by a man
man and a dog who barely planned anything else correctly in their whole lives. That is the perfect ending to this list, because it is the smallest karma in shape and the biggest karma in meaning. James Woods did not earn a big death, because a big death would have given him dignity. What the show gave him instead was the most humiliating loop it could think of. 2 boxes, 2 candy trails, 0 learning. A government warehouse with his crate lined up next to itself. A man who thought he was smart, trapped in the same cage twice because he could not resist a piece of peanut butter candy on a sidewalk.
If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.